For 712 days, he hadn't moved not enough to matter. Families strolled past his enclosure, their voices hushed with the same whispered judgment. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. The words hung in the air like dust, drifting toward the glass that separated the world from the creature inside. Orin lay curled in the farthest corner of his habitat, scales the color of aged copper, dulled into a lifeless green. Once, those scales had shimmered like living emeralds, catching starlight and throwing it back in dazzling arcs. Now, they absorbed the sterile glow of fluorescent panels overhead, making him seem more relic than life. His wings, thin membranes, stretched over skeletal struts, folded tightly against his sides, looked brittle like paper left too long in the sun. The reinforced habitat was a marvel of containment. Engineering. Pressure-sealed polymer walls, energy-dampening fields humming. Softly, an artificial climate calibrated down to the molecule. Every detail screamed control, safety, protocol. Yet none of it concealed the truth that this sanctuary wasn't built for kindness. It was a cage, polished and clinical, where anomalies waited to be dissected by science or forgotten by time. Necklace fused around Aurain's throat, gleamed faintly even in shadow. A band of metal, smooth yet alive, etched with curling symbols that shimmered just enough to suggest movement. Staff had tried everything to remove it, every alloy specific. Laser and microsurgical drone they possessed. The verdict had been unanimous. Impossible without killing him. So, it stayed mysterious, unyielding, and for 712 days. Mute. Until today. Lena Rivers walked the observation hall with her hood up, not because she was hiding, though she often felt like she should, but because the sanctuary lights burned too bright against her gray eyes. She moved slowly, hands stuffed in her jacket pockets, letting the voices of tourists wash over her like static. "Mom, let's see the Gleason butterflies." A child squealed. "Are those the Martian spores?" "They say they hum if you." Lena tuned it out. The crowds came for novelty, for spectacle. They stared at things they didn't understand, then walked away before understanding could bloom. Her father would say she had the same flaw, that she spent too much time on things that didn't matter. Xenolinguistics is a hobby, Lena, not a career. Maybe he was right. But then again, he wasn't here, was he? He was tucked away in a conference room, debating ethics policies, while Lena drifted down level 3, toward the section marked with black and yellow hazard stripes. Caution. High-level species view at safe distance. The others barely glanced at the last enclosure. To them, it was empty, but for a dull green heap, breathing slow, silent breaths. To Lena, it was something else entirely. She stopped, pressing closer to the glass, and exhaled softly. The dragon's eyes opened. Not a blink, not a twitch, just a smooth, liquid unfurling of amber, catching the light and holding it. His gaze didn't slide past her the way wild animals look through people. It anchored, deliberate, heavy as gravity. Lena's pulse stumbled. She stepped closer, nose almost touching the glass. "Hey," she whispered, and immediately felt foolish. Talking to a level 3 classified organism was the definition of pointless. And she saw it, the necklace. Its surface gleamed, alive in a way she hadn't noticed from the front of the exhibit. She shifted slightly, just an inch to the left, and something changed. The etched symbols didn't just shine, they slid. Not much, but enough for her sharp mind to catch. Lena froze, heart punching her ribs. Symbols didn't shift. Not unless they weren't symbols at all. She stepped right, slow, and the shapes warped again, curling, stretching like liquid under glass. Her breath caught as realization, pierced through curiosity like lightning splitting a sky. If those markings were just decoration, why did they move? For a long time after she left the observation hall, Lena couldn't shake the image of those shifting lines. They haunted her through the sanctuary gift shop, through the sterile cafe where her father insisted they grab a quick snack, and all the way back to the hotel that night. The more she thought about them, the less sense they made, and the more they demanded answers. She lay on the bed with her tablet balanced across her knees, the room's muted city lights filtering through the half-closed blinds. Her parents had gone downstairs for a late meeting, leaving her alone in the quiet. Perfect. Lena opened her holofeed and sensed the photos she'd taken quick, furtive snaps of the dragon's necklace, captured while the attendant wasn't looking. On the first glance, the images seemed like nothing more than ornamental grooves, the kind you might see on ceremonial cuffs from Zeta Prime. But as Lena began scrolling through them frame by frame, a tremor crawled down her spine. They weren't. Identical. In the first image, a looping curve sat angled toward the lower edge of the necklace. In the next, that same curve had stretched, just enough to form the beginning of a spiral. Another photo, another subtle change. The pattern wasn't random. It was systematic, like gears turning in slow motion. Not static, she murmured. Aloud. Her voice sounded strange in the quiet room, like it didn't belong. She launched her augmented reality suite, a tool meant for stargazing, not decoding alien glyphs. Still, it had the most advanced pattern recognition algorithms she could access without triggering security protocols. Lena uploaded the images, fingers drumming as the program churned through its process. Lines of code scrolled by, searching, comparing, matching against linguistic archives from 100 known civilizations. No matches found. She wasn't surprised. Her gut told her this wasn't a language anyone had logged. It wasn't even meant for two-dimensional space. Every instinct screamed that what she saw was only a fragment of something larger, like looking at a constellation through the wrong lens. So, she adjusted. She ran a dimensional variance filter, forcing the software to treat the symbols as coordinates, as if they were star maps instead of words. Minutes passed. Her heart hammered as the app shifted the flat symbols into floating holographic fragments, spinning them against a virtual grid. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to align. A lattice unfolded in the air above her bed, shimmering with pale light. The pattern didn't resemble any language Lena had ever studied. It was something alive, 4 layers deep, rotating on invisible. Axes, curves sliding over curves, like an orrery of silver planets. And then the text appeared. Not alien scribbles this time, but human-readable letters traced in blue fire across her display. Stellar Guardian Unit X7 Service. Designation: Emergency Response Navigator awaiting primary diarrhea. Lena sucked in a breath so sharp it burned her. Throat? Navigator? Guardian? What did that even mean? She leaned closer, as if proximity could make sense of it all. The words glowed steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the weight of what she'd uncovered slammed into her. The sanctuary. Thought he was just another exotic specimen, a dangerous oddity to lock away. They didn't know. They couldn't know. That dragon wasn't just some wild creature. He was a system, a design, something built for a purpose. She replayed the phrases over and over, mouth dry. Emergency Response Navigator. Her mind flashed to the stories of Arcturus Station, the deep space research outpost that had gone dark 5 years ago, its crew lost to what the news called a catastrophic systems failure. No survivors. No debris ever found. Just a rumor whispered in academic circles that Arcturus had been working on something beyond. Revolutionary. Lena stared at the glowing lattice spinning in her room. What if the rumor wasn't just true? What if the proof of it had been sitting in that glass box for 2 years, wearing a necklace that wasn't jewelry at all, but an interface and artifact of lost technology? Her pulse roared in her ears. She knew what the logical thing was. Report it, tell her father, let the committees. and councils swarm in with their endless protocols. But something inside her recoiled at the thought. She pictured those amber eyes, patient and hollow, the weight of a soul waiting, not feral, not hopeless, just forgotten. She closed her eyes and whispered to the empty room, "If you're a navigator, what are you waiting for?" The hollow lattice flickered in response. For an instant, just an instant, the letters rearranged themselves into a phrase that wasn't in the archive, wasn't part of any log.compatible neural signature. Detected, awaiting voice authorization. Lena's breath hitched. The glowing lines spiraled tighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. As if answering her thoughts, she backed away so fast the tablet slid off her knees and thudded against the floor. For a second, she just stared, pulse jackhammering, mouth dry, compatible neural signature. That meant her. She reached for the tablet with shaking fingers, staring at the final line that hung like a warning or an invitation in the air. Protocol standby. Guardian link initiation. If those markings were just decoration, why did they know her name? The sanctuary looked different at night, not by day. It buzzed with laughter and curiosity, a sterile carnival of wonders, all neatly labeled and safely caged. But under the glow of emergency lights, stripped of its cheerful crowds, it felt like something else entirely. Cold, silent. Predatory. Lena stood at the edge of the staff access lot, her hood pulled low as the night air whispered against her cheeks. Beyond the chain-link barrier, the main complex loomed a block of steel and glass slashed by pale security beams. Cameras swept the perimeter in precise arcs, the hum of drones riding the wind like the whisper of unseen wings. Every instinct screamed this was insane. But the image of that holographic phrase burned behind her eyes. Compatible neural signature detected. Awaiting voice authorization. If she walked away now, they'd move him. She'd overheard enough in passing to know what transfer for research purposes meant. They'd tear him apart, dismantle him piece by piece like a machine, never understanding what he truly was. Her fingers closed around the slim rectangle of her father's access chip in her pocket. She hadn't planned to steal it. It had just happened. A chance moment when he left it on the knitstand, when her brain screamed louder than her conscience. The perimeter gate wasn't a challenge. Not when the chip carried executive clearance. The real gamble was time. She had maybe 15 minutes before the system flagged the anomaly, maybe less. Enough to see him, to confirm what she'd found. Enough, she told herself, to give him a chance. The lock disengaged with a soft chime. Lena slipped through, moving low between shadow and light, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. Past the storage hangar, past the service yard where maintenance. Bots slept like skeletal insects under tarps. She reached the staff entrance, slid the chip against the scanner, and exhaled as the door whispered open. Inside. The air smelled different, ionized and sharp, the scent of machinery and antiseptic. The hallways stretched long and narrow, lined with sealed observation windows. Creatures floated in containment fields, crawled in simulated biomes, pulsed faintly behind energy glass. Level 3 was deeper, down a lift that rumbled like the throat of some giant creature. When the doors opened, Lena stepped into near darkness. Emergency strips led cold blue light across the floor. The hum of environmental regulators filled the silence, steady and suffocating. Ahead she saw it, the sign etched in bold white across a black door frame: restricted. Class 3 hazard. Containment. Her breath misted as she swiped the chip again. The door hissed open, and there he was. AUREN. He wasn't curled in the corner this time. He stood slow, deliberate, as if sensing her long before the door unsealed. His wings rustled faintly, casting fractured shadows across the reinforced mesh that now separated them. Up close, He was magnificent. Not just big perfect. Every line of his body spoke of purpose, symmetry, design. Scales shimmered faintly in the low light, a spectrum of deep green, threaded with hints of gold, as though something inside him still burned, refusing to go dark. And then his eyes found hers. They pinned her in place, molten amber glowing with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. There was no blank animal stare here. There was calculation. Recognition. The necklace pulsed, not bright, just enough to make the symbols stir like sleepers waking. Lena's throat tightened. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she pulled the tablet from her bag and opened the holographic interface she'd prepared. The command phrase hovered on the screen like a dare. "Stellar Guardian Unit X7, she whispered, barely audible. "Initiate voice protocol. Authorization, Lena Rivers." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the symbols on the necklace erupted in light, blue-white fire cascading across their curves, as the air shivered with a low harmonic tone alien, yet eerily melodic, like the hum of a distant starship. The voice came not from the necklace, but everywhere at once, resonating through the walls, the floor, her bones. Authentication incomplete. Compatible neural signature confirmed. Awaiting Guardian linked protocol. The glass between them vibrated under the force of that sound. Lena staggered, clutching the railing, heart slamming so hard it hurt. The hologram on her tablet flickered wildly and stabilized into new text, scrolling fast, link parameters, standby mode engaged, security override, enacting safety. Release, she didn't understand until the reinforced mesh unlocked. The heavy seal cracked with a hiss. Of depressurization. Panels retracted with a smooth metallic sigh, and the air flooded with heat and ozone. Lena froze. Every instinct screamed to run. But her legs wouldn't obey because Orin was moving. One step, slow and fluid, then another. The light from his necklace bathed the chamber in shifting blue, painting his scales in living fire. His spines flared like a crown as his head lowered, massive and deliberate, until his gaze was level with hers. No glass, no barrier, just a breath of space and the weight of a choice she couldn't take back. What have I done? The necklace flared again, casting their shadows across the walls like ghosts. And then, for the first time in 712 days, the dragon spoke not with a roar, but with a single resonant phrase that curled through her mind like smoke. Guardian accepted. The alarms began to scream. Asterisk, the alarms split the silence like jagged glass, their shrill pulse echoing through the containment wing as red emergency strobes strobed across the walls. Panels slammed shut in distant corridors. Doors sealed with metallic finality. Overhead, the voice of the sanctuary security AI cut through the chaos with calm, merciless precision. Containment breach. Level 3 protocols engaged. All. Personnel evacuate. Automated security drones deploying. Lena's breath caught in her throat as the meaning slammed into her. She'd done this. She'd triggered a system designed to respond with lethal force. And still, she couldn't move. Not because of fear, but because of him. Orin stood no more than a meter away, every line of his body radiating power held in perfect control. Heat rolled from his scales in shimmering waves, filling the chamber with the scent of ozone and something sharper metal and fire braided into one. His spines pulsed faintly, glowing in rhythm with the necklace that still blazed with its lattice. Of living light, her instincts told her to run. The part of her that understood what he was whispered something different. Don't break eye contact. The dragon lowered his head until his breath swept across her face, warm and oddly sweet, like crushed herbs in summer heat. In his eyes burned a molten clarity that stripped away every doubt. This wasn't an animal. This was someone watching, calculating, deciding. Guardian accepted. The voice thrummed again, not aloud, not entirely, but threading through her mind like a current. It wasn't speech. It was understanding, pure and seamless, carrying weight no sound could hold. Behind her, the security gates slammed down with a reverberating boom. A split second later, the sharp whir of drones rose in the distance, growing. Louder, Lena Rivers. The AI barked from the ceiling, its voice sharp and metallic. You are in violation of federal xenobiological law. Remain stationary for retrieval. Retrieval. Right. The polite term for arrest, for quarantine, for never seeing the sky again. She turned back to Orin, panic clawing up her spine. We have to move, she whispered. For an instant, she thought he didn't understand. Then the necklace pulsed once, bright as a lightning strike, and the entire far wall of the containment unit exploded. Outward in a storm of molten metal, and shrapnel. Lena hit the floor as heat seared past her ears, the shockwave punching the air from her lungs. When the smoke cleared, an opening yawned where reinforced alloy had stood seconds before, edges glowing, cherry red under the slash of emergency lights. Orin moved like liquid fury. One leap carried him through the breach, his wings snapping open in a ripple of gold-veined membrane that spanned wider than a ground car. Wind whipped through the gap, swirling ash and sparks as he crouched, talons gouging deep trenches into the metal floor. Lena scrambled after him without thinking. Aurain's head whipped around, eyes locking on hers with a command that wasn't a command at all, but something deeper, an instinctive tether that yanked her forward. Run. She ran. Through the twisted opening into a maintenance corridor thick with smoke and the reek of scorched alloy. Overhead, steel shutters hammered down, sealing passage after passage, but Orin moved like a shadow of fire, predicting every closure before it fell. His wings folded tight as he surged ahead, tail lashing like a living whip, smashing aside barriers in showers of sparks. Behind them, the drones arrived, sleek ovals of black alloy, bristling with shock lances and plasma cutters. The first volley shrieked past Lena's ear, searing a hole in the wall inches from her head. She ducked, heart detonating against her ribs, and sprinted harder, her lungs tearing with every breath. Then the floor dropped. Orin lunged forward, for claws raking open a hatch and flinging it aside like foil. The world tilted as he dove, and, for a heartbeat, Lena hesitated at the lip of the shaft. 10 meters down, maybe more, just blackness. Lena. Her name ripped through her skull like a lightning crack, not with sound, but with thought. She didn't question it. She jumped. Air tore at her hair. She screamed, arms flailing, and then something caught her. Heat, muscle, and scales coiling around her in mid-fall as Aurain's wings snapped wide with a bone-deep crack. The drop ended in a jarring swoop, her stomach pitching as they shot through a horizontal shaft, his wings folding so tight they scraped sparks from the walls. The drones weren't far behind. Their engine whine roared through the ducts, closing fast. A plasma bolt screamed past, blinding white, sizzling across Aurain's shoulder. He snarled a deep seismic rumble that made the air itself vibrate and spat a plume of fire so white-hot. It wasn't fire at all, but plasma vented from the core of a star. The shaft behind them became a sunburst of annihilation. When they burst into the night, Lena couldn't breathe. The sky was a bruise of storm clouds and sodium light, the city beyond a sprawl of neon veins pulsing against the dark. Wind tore at her clothes as Orin flung himself into open air, wings detonating outward with a THUNDERCLAP. And for the first time, Lena saw what he really was. Not a prisoner, not a beast, but something built for infinity, a creature carved from gravity and flame, moving with the precision of a warship and the grace of a comet. She clung to the ridge of his spine, the wind ripping tears from her eyes. the world dropping away beneath them in a blur of glass and steel. The sanctuary shrank into a scar of light on the horizon, somewhere deep in her bones. A voice whispered not with sound, but with certainty. Directive required? She swallowed hard, her words ripped raw by the wind. Directive? What does? That, the necklace blazed like a newborn star. Mission parameters, undefined. Awaiting command from primary. Primary. Her breath caught, and for one impossible heartbeat, the world seemed to hang suspended. Nothing but stars and storm below. Then hear me, she whispered against the gale, her voice breaking, her hands fisting against scales that felt like warm stone. Stay alive. The glow surged brighter, flaring like a second dawn. Alrain's roar split the sky, not a sound of rage, but something older, wilder, a hymn to freedom as the storm swallowed them whole. And far below, in the city's dark heart, black-armored men watched from the landing bay of a stealth dropship, their visors reflecting the dragon's fading blaze. Target's airborne, one said into the gum. His voice was flat, almost amused. Good, replied the one behind him, a man with eyes like knives and a smile that didn't reach them. Let it run. We only need the girl. Asterisk. The city stretched out below like a circuit board gone mad, veins of neon tangled in rivers of glass, pulsing with the lifeblood of night traffic. From this height, Lena could almost pretend it was beautiful, almost forget the black steel fury chasing them through the clouds. Almost the first missile streaked past her ear. It didn't explode, not exactly. Instead, the air seemed to fold in on itself, a rippling void tearing through space like someone had yanked reality sideways. Orin banked hard, his wings snapping like sails in a storm as the shockwave slammed into them. Lena screamed as gravity turned traitor, pitching her sideways into a blur of wind and lightning before Arrain's claws hooked her jacket and yanked her back against his spine. He roared not at the missile, not at the storm, but at the black shape slicing out of the clouds behind them. The dropship looked less like an aircraft and more like a predator. Its hull plated in matte armor, it swallowed the city lights. Sleek, angular, utterly silent save for the electric hum of grav drives. From its belly, a swarm of drones erupted, slicing through the rain in perfect formation. Target lock acquired. The necklace's voice was calm, clinical, carrying. Straight into Lena's skull, even as the wind screamed past her ears. Weaponized pursuit craft, strategic escape route required. Then find one, she shouted, though her words were shredded by the gale. The response wasn't words, but motion. Orin dropped like a stone, pulling her stomach into her throat. As the city rushed up in a blur of glass and steel, neon signs fractured across his scales, shards of crimson and violet sliding over emerald plates as he folded his wings tight and threaded the chaos of high-rise spires. Plasma fire rained from above, bolts sizzling against tower walls, shearing metal like paper. One drone screamed too close, and Arrain's tail lashed a whip of bone and fire that smashed it into a sparking spiral down to the streets below. Lena Rivers, the security AI, crackled faintly over the storm, hijacking every public comm system in range. Surrender immediately. You are in violation of Galactic Biosecurity Code. Violation? Lena spat through gritted teeth, clutching the ridge of Arrain's spine as he knifed between a pair of skyrises so tight she felt the glass graze her boots. You locked him in a cage for 2 years. You don't get to lecture me. But the voice didn't answer, because something else cut through the static. A different voice, smooth, human, dripping with the kind of calm that only came from absolute control. Don't run, Miss Rivers, it said. You'll only make this harder for both of you. The words weren't amplified. They were in her ear, intimate and cold as breath on her neck. A hacked channel, personal, Who the hell are you? Lena rasped. The chuckle that came back was soft, almost kind. Someone who's been waiting a long time for that dragon to wake up. Aurain's growl rolled like distant thunder, not at her, but at the voice, at the implication woven into it. Why? Lena demanded, her heart pounding. Why do you want him? Want him? A pause, edged in amusement. Oh no, Miss Rivers. I want what's inside him. The navigation core. The interface. The part that makes him more than an animal. Lena's grip tightened, nails digging, into warm scales slick with rain. Her mind flashed back to the glowing lattice in her hotel room. The phrase that had unraveled her life. Stellar Guardian Unit X7. Emergency Response Navigator. You sabotaged Arcturus Station, she whispered. The silence on the line was answer enough. Then softly, you're smarter than they said. Her stomach dropped, not from fear, but because Orin suddenly pulled up hard, wings snapping wide, and the world tilted into chaos. They weren't fleeing anymore. They were climbing vertically, slicing through sheets of rain, wind battering Lena so hard her teeth rattled. What are you doing? She gasped, choking on the storm. The necklace pulsed against the night like a shard of lightning. Hostile craft locking quantum anchors. Escape corridor required. Corridor? The word chilled her in a way bullets never could. Orin. She breathed, fingers locking around his spines. Tell me you're not. The sky ripped open. One moment, storm clouds churned above. The next, they folded inward like someone had punched a hole in reality. A wound bled white fire across the darkness, spilling cold stars into the rain. The dropship skidded sideways, its instruments screaming in protest as the fabric of space warped under it. Lena's scream died in her throat as Orin dove straight for the tier. Every instinct shrieked to let go, to claw her way back to the lie of gravity, but something deeper, stranger, sang beneath the terror, because she could. Feel it now, not in her ears, not in her mind, in her bones. The map unfolding behind her eyelids, galaxies slotting into place like beads on silver threads, currents of dark matter thrumming like the pulse of an unseen ocean dot. It wasn't just his vision. She felt it was his purpose. The necklace flared blinding white as the voice thundered in her skull. Quantum slip engaged, phase corridor open, and then the world's shattered light shearing, time stretching like molten glass, the storm vanishing in a scream of collapsing reality as they plunged through a tunnel carved from the bones of the universe. Behind them, the Black Ops dropship lurched, caught in the gravitational undertow, its hull groaning as the man with the knife-edge smile watched the impossible with Predator's eyes. Run, little girl, he murmured into the static. Every corridor ends somewhere. And when? Yours does I'll be waiting. The first thing Lena felt was silence, not quiet silence. The kind that devours sound, stripping the world to nothing but the rhythm of your own heartbeat. No wind, no rain, no engines snarling in pursuit. Just a hollow expanse where even echoes dared not exist. She opened her eyes. The corridor wasn't a tunnel in the way humans understood tunnels. It was a wound in the fabric of reality, a scar of molten light twisting infinitely in every direction, and they were inside it, suspended between threads of geometry that bent and fractured like shards of crystal adrift in oil. Stars flared and died outside the corridor's skin, visible through rifts that didn't obey distance. And at the center of that impossible stillness, Orin hovered, wings locked wide, body taut, muscles trembling under the weight of forces no creature should survive. The glow from his necklace had become a sun, arcs of blue fire crawling up his spines like lightning racing veins of gold. Lena clung to him, every nerve screaming as gravity tore itself to ribbons around her. She felt the heat of his scales through her soaked jacket, the raw power thrumming under her palms, and beneath that, something else. Weakness, fragile as the thinnest glass. "Orin," she rasped, the word burning her throat. "What is this?" The answer wasn't sound, but resonance, a ripple in her bones, an ache behind her eyes. Phase corridor. Temporary. Stability compromised. Navigator systems critical. Her chest tightened. His breathing came ragged now, every rise of his ribs slower than the last. The molten pulse of his necklace was no longer steady. It flickered, spasmed like a dying star. "No," she whispered, clutching harder. "You're not doing this alone. Tell me how to fix it." The glow surged weakly, enough to carve words. In the air, letters suspended in fire that licked and curled like living code. Transfer protocol. Available. Authorization required. Primary dot her blood went cold. Transfer? What does that mean? The necklace shimmered again, and this time, the words weren't just text, they were memory. Images detonated behind her eyes. Corridors of steel singing with alarms, hands reaching for a console, a voice. Crying navigator core integrity, failing initiate handoff. She understood then. This wasn't a command sequence. It was a goodbye. "No," she said again, harder this time. Her voice cracked, splintering like glass under a hammer. "There has to be another way. There's always another way." But the next phrase cut through her plea with the gentle finality of a closing. "Door, without transfer. Function termination imminent. Acceptance protocol engaged." Tears burned her eyes, hot and blinding. She wanted to scream, to curse every law of physics that had led them here. Instead, she pressed her forehead to the warm curve of his neck, her breath hitching against scales that smelled of ozone and rain. "Tell me what to do." The corridor shuddered, edges fraying as reality howled for what it was owed. Aurain's body locked rigid, his spines flaring in a corona of molten blue as the final phrase seared into her vision, bright enough to leave ghosts on her retinas. Command. Sequence. THE 974. Verbal confirmation required. Her throat felt carved from stone. She forced the words out anyway. "Stellar Guardian Unit X7, she whispered, the syllables trembling like a prayer on her lips. Command sequence Theta 974. Authorization Lena Rivers. The light hit like a nova, it wasn't heated. Was existence, folding and pouring into her all at once, an avalanche of stars crashing through the corridors of her mind. She screamed, but there was no sound, just light and fire and memory detonating in every cell. Charts of galaxies spinning like jeweled wheels. Equations she had no language for knitting themselves into the marrow of her bones. The feeling of slipping between dimensions as easily as sliding through water, and beneath it all, a voice. Low, resonant, endless. "Do not fear. This is what I am for. This is what you are for." When the light dimmed, Aurain's body was already dissolving scales breaking apart into motes of emerald fire, wings shredding into ribbons of starlight that curled like smoke before vanishing into the infinite dark. Lena collapsed to her knees. On nothing, clutching the only thing that remained solid, the necklace, warm and pulsing faintly against her palm. Its metal was no longer fused into anyone's flesh. It lay weightless, yet heavy with everything he had been, its glow sensed. To the beat of her own heart, her tears drifted free in the absence of gravity, scattering like shattered glass across the void. "Why?" She whispered into the silence, her voice hoarse and breaking. "Why me?" The answer wasn't words, not anymore. It was a presence, vast and quiet and utterly certain, flowing through the weave of her nerves like a tide. "Because you saw me." Corridor trembled, collapsing in on itself as the last strands of stability snapped. The light warped, folded and spat her out into air, real air, sharp and cold and full of gravity. She slammed onto wet earth under a sky shredded by dawn, coughing, shaking, clutching the necklace as if it were oxygen. Somewhere behind the ringing in her skull, the voice lingered not apart from her, not above her, but within her, braided into every spark of thought. Navigator core, integrated. Mission parameters, undefined. Slowly, shakily, Lena pushed herself to her feet. The wind hissed through the trees of a place she didn't recognize. Her limbs felt alien, yet thrumming with power threads of geometry, flickering at the edge of sight, like veins of starlight ghosting across the ground. She looked down at the necklace. Its light flared once, painting her fingers in green fire, and a single phrase shimmered across its surface like breath on glass. W-A-P-Q, Captain? Lena lifted her eyes to the horizon, beyond the trees, beyond the clouds, beyond the cage of a world that had never been enough. Somewhere far behind her, men in black armor were tearing open the sky with their machines. Somewhere far ahead, the map of everything waited like an open hand. Her fingers tightened on the necklace. A breath shuddered free from her chest, tasting of rain and resolve. Everywhere, she whispered. The light answered like a heartbeat, and then the forest shook as space split open, blooming into brilliance at her feet, and Lena Rivers stepped forward, carrying a dragon in her bones. Asterisk, the end.